Hey, what's up? Wanted to go over a deal that made us around $40,000 in an assignment fee from beginning to end without skipping a single step. Want to review all the little secrets that all the gurus won't talk about. Here's a HUD, by the way. So hopefully you guys can learn something from it and create and execute on these opportunities yourself. The particular deal I'll be discussing is one that closed in late September and led to around $40,000 in an assignment fee. I thought this deal in particular was a perfect one to make a video on, just because we came across every single hurdle imaginable in the 3 or so months it took from putting it under contract to actually closing at escrow. There's a crap ton to learn from it. So how we found the lead, it's pretty simple actually. Back when I found the lead in June of 2024, our primary source of leads was cold calling and SMS to pre-foreclosures, probates, and tax liens from courthouse data. We did it in Georgia, Arizona, and Florida. This particular deal is in Florida. I was doing my usual run through on a pre-foreclosure list. Typically when I'm calling on PFCs, I'll open with something like, hey, my name's Ivan. I work with people who might be having trouble with the bank. I wanted to give you a call to see how I can help. That's a good cold call line to start with, at least on pre-foreclosures. It lowers their guard. A lot of people like to start with, hey, are you looking to sell a house? These people are tired of that shit. Don't say that. I ring one contact who picks up on the third ring. Third ring is extreme. If you want to call it third ring, go ahead, but I get it if you don't. But he turns out to be a Spanish speaker, which works out well for me since I'm fluent in Spanish, and we have a conversation about kind of what's going on. We decided it would be better if we talk the next day at just a slightly earlier time, since he was working and it was getting a bit late. The next day, we were able to have a longer, more detailed conversation. This guy, let's call him Jack, he inherited the house from his father who had passed away the year before. And take note of those quotation marks, they'll be important later. Jack had never, in the whole time he'd inherited the house, made a single HOA payment or a mortgage payment, so the house was pretty far behind in arrears. That was about 1.5 years of no payments. And the constant letters and the constant calls from all these different people was very much stressing him out, to the point that he just would go through the day with his phone constantly off and stopped opening any of the letters that he was being sent, whether from the bank or whoever it was that's sending him letters. He pretty much stuck his head in the sand and didn't want to hear it anymore. In this kind of situation, if you can present yourself as their only solution and help them, not make them, but help them come to the realization that they need your help, there can be massive profits. Not always, but there can be. You can do this kind of by leading the conversation through how and what questions, which, depending on how this video and others do, I'll definitely be making a video on. Best part is you can help this person who's in a terrible situation and potentially in denial get into a better spot. Moving on, as he noticed my confidence and that I was only there to help how I could, his wall just slowly came down. And he became less shy. Later in the conversation, when we began to ease into the topic of what his plans were and what he was thinking as to how to get out of this situation, his answer just kept being, I don't know. I asked, do you think it would be in your best interest to sell the property? He again said, I don't know. So I asked if someone would be able to go in there, pay off all the debt that's been accrued from the HOA, bank, and all the legal fees and interest fees that come with missing those payments. Really digging into those pain points. And you could possibly walk away with some money in your pocket. Would that be something that you think would negatively affect your family? That's what I said. I don't know if that's something I would say word by word today, but it worked fine. His response was something like, no, that would definitely help. And who do you know who could do that for me, is what he said after. Me, I was that guy. Me and my team. We agreed to talk the next day after he's discussed things with his wife and that kind of thing. And other types of sales, like if you're selling like a gym membership or personal training, the conversation with the wife or with the husband isn't something that you want to sometimes allow. It's something that a lot of sales training people are going to be like, right then and there, you say this, this, and that. With real estate and with wholesaling, it doesn't apply. Don't listen to anyone who tells you otherwise. Trust me on that. So in the background, me and my team are doing some of the underwriting as to what we need to be at. Over the phone, I'd also made sure to ask just how much he owed to the bank, how much he thought he owed to the HOA, sort of a little bit of the condition of the property. And just based off local comps and the way he described the condition, we could easily dispose this thing at above $250,000, which put us at a great spot. I'll talk a little bit more about the numbers later. The next day, I'd actually gone down to the Florida Keys with my girlfriend's family, and we're at the resort, and at my scheduled time to talk to him, I call and no answer. I give it like 30 minutes or so, no answer. I try one more time and he finally answers and we have our conversation. I was getting kind of nervous because I'd actually talked to my girlfriend's dad about the deal. And so, that would have been awkward if nothing came out of it. So we have our conversation about all the details of the sale. I answer all his questions and we finally get to the point of an offer, right? I ask him, how much do you think is a fair number for you to walk away with if we're able to take care of all these things for you? And, his answer, as per usual, was, I don't know. This guy's a master negotiator. Side note, we typically come in with a specific number and exactly what we're offering. But in this case, we didn't know exactly what he owed to the HOA and stuff. Like, it could have been massive, it could have been tiny. So we thought it would be better to make the contract or structure the contract in a way that would simply state something like, after all the debts are paid off, Jack will walk away with X amount. And we thought that would work better. And that's one of my favorite ways to structure things, because it focuses more on not the number that they've kind of heard over and over again, or that they go online, they're like, wait, the number you're giving me is so much lower than the one that's on Zillow. Yeah, right? Like, there's obvious reasons for that, but they don't know that. And so that's why it's one of my favorite ways, because now it's structured things, or it sounds better because they think, oh, I'm getting this amount in my pocket. I'm getting $10,000 in my pocket. Wow, that's a lot. Regardless, I really try and dig for a number, but he just isn't budging. So here's what I do. I say something like, if we're able to cover all closing costs, pay off all debts, I start listing all the debts and how big they could potentially be and how much they keep growing and how much of a pain it's going to be to pay him off himself, and pay off any other legal fees that can potentially arise. You don't have to make a single repair to the house, and it'll just be money in your pocket for you and your wife to enjoy. And we do things on your timeline. Where would we have to be for that? Well, what do you think he said? I don't know. Well, I couldn't get a number out of him, so I did the next best thing, which is just give him an offer, a minimal one. I'd usually try and get a number out of someone, but sometimes they literally actually don't know, and I believe that this guy really didn't know. So I give him a minimal offer. I said something very similar to what I just said, but ended it with, and you get to walk away with $5,000 in cash. Would you be against that? Silence. He said he needed to be a little bit higher. I slowly inched my way up. $6K, $7K. And then we agreed on $10,000 in his pocket after closing. And we agreed to a 30-day closing period. Had our TC send him a contract via DocuSign, called him a little bit later, walked him through it over the phone, got his autograph, and we were set for potentially a $60,000 assignment fee. Well, little did we know this would become a fat pain in our ass for the next couple of months. In the following minutes is when I'm going to be spilling all the tea that no influencers or gurus want to spill. A lot of beginners think it's all about getting the contract, and don't get me wrong, that's like obviously super important. And in a lot of cases that'll be enough, but if you're focusing on like niche data, expect something else. In the last 4 to 5 months, we've had to back out of like 5 or 6 deals after coming to an agreement because hidden liens and that sort of thing come up and just ruin everything. So, get ready for the actual tea. Typically, gurus paint this picture of real estate and wholesaling, especially about how simple it is, etc., etc. Also, they can sell you a course or get you to pay $10,000 to join their community. I won't say any names, but I don't have access to creating those things. I really don't plan on it. So I'll just give it to you for free. And the gurus can go suck it. Let me lay you with the big truth they always forget to mention. When you're dealing with PFCs and probates, there's typically going to be hidden fees and liens against the property that just aren't disclosed to you by the seller. It's just sometimes out of ignorance and other times just out of being assholes. You may have locked up the contract at like $100,000 thinking there's just an $80,000 mortgage with $5K in HOA liens to pay off, leaving you with, let's say, $15,000 to the seller and a $20K assignment for you at $120,000. Next thing you know, you put it under contract, open escrow, and there is a $15,000 HOA fee that was very hidden, and Joey from the HOA decided to upcharge on lawyer fees coincidentally 1 week before you get it under contract. So now your assignment has gone from $20,000 to $5,000. And then you try and get in contract with the HOA, but they're only open Monday through Wednesday, 12 to 3 p.m. And it's just a whole problem. And then your buyer is backing out because now the timeline has extended and they want to buy other deals. And this happens all the time. This is why you always want to try and create as much room as possible for yourself. And in your calculations, underwriting the deal, which is super important that you underwrite the deal properly, try and bake in there the worst case scenarios and overestimate a little bit. This sucks to hear as a beginner for, obvious reasons, but it's just the truth. I'd love to make a video on these little details people don't talk about, so just let me know if you want one. We're a week or so into it. We're still thinking it's a $50,000 plus assignment fee, and we get a call from the title company pretty much saying the property hasn't gone through probate. It needs to in order for the sale to take place. Remember those quotation marks. You remember those? Yeah, this is where they come in. We hadn't noticed this because Jack and his father, from whom he got the property, have the same name. Sometimes if the property's under a trust or something like that, or there's joint owners, probate is not necessary. But in this case, thankfully we used the title company. Otherwise, it would have been fraudulent. Now get ready because you're about to get a master class on probate for free. Yeah. So you ran into 2 big problems. Getting the payoff from the HOA and the mortgage company and the paperwork. There's so much paperwork that needed to be filled out by so many people. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you'll see. We had to get all the heirs of the property to sign the purchase and sale agreement for it to carry any validity. That included Jack's mom, who was still alive and was still married to Jack Sr. at the time of his death. Jack Jr.'s 2 siblings and their spouses. This will avoid having to do it again down the line, or so we thought, because later on we actually had to do another one, but forget about it. If there's a will and you are like big chilling, like you have nothing to worry about. But there wasn't one in this case, And so the document we had to collect were the certificate of death, the property deeds, all this stuff can be grabbed. Well, maybe not the certificate of death, but you can grab it from the county records. And the payoff statements, which are usually easy to get if there's an heir on the loan, but otherwise you have to go through probate first to get a proof of attorney or a power of attorney, but put in place first. Now, remember how I said payoffs are easy to get? I just said it right now. Yeah, well, that's only the case if there isn't a pending foreclosure. This is very important. Remember this is super important. Instead of being able to request a payoff and then receive it a couple minutes later after getting Jack to give us verbal consent with the bank on the phone, getting him to sign a POA for us, we learned the hard way that the banks will not grant payoff statements for weeks on end when there's a foreclosure involved. We tried to do it like 5 times and we just failed each time, and it was so annoying. You have to get Jack on the phone, wait for Jack to be available, get on the phone with the banks, and then from there we let a couple weeks pass and we just got nothing. So we consulted an attorney's office, and it's important to remember that attorneys who are used to working with investors, you can find them in communities or Facebook groups, they'll be willing to wait until closing to get paid. Typically, taking an estate through probate will cost somewhere between $4,000 to $5,000. So we had an attorney's office, which we consulted, take over from there. And even they struggled for well over a month to get the payoff statement. So honestly, it might just have been the specific mortgage company, which I'm forgetting the name now, but this isn't uncommon. It's happened to us before. So getting the payoff is the most complicated part, or it was for us. It was the most difficult part, especially since there was a pending foreclosure, but you cannot take something through probate without confirmation of the existing debts on the estate. Or the sale, it can't take place as well. And when we finally got it, we sent it over to title so they can get everything together, since the clause on the contract read, buyer and seller acknowledge that the final purchase price will be determined within 3 days of receipt of related payoffs or whatever. We didn't know, however, that a lot of title companies won't accept the payoff unless they receive it directly. So now we had to have the mortgage company, which is a pain in the ass to communicate with, and their attorneys send it to title. Then we had the payoff statement and probate could proceed. We then had to get signed the affidavit of death by all the heirs of the estate. This is a document that the attorney would provide. And then from there, probate, they could open a case with the petition for probate and notice of hearing. Sometimes when you're dealing with an estate with multiple heirs, you'll face serious issues trying to get resolved. Who gets how much and what gets what, or who gets what, if it's not something that a will has clarified. But luckily in Jack's case, all the heirs agreed that it was Jack's house to inherit or his profits to inherit, and there was no issue there. You'll also face difficulty if there's a lot of people involved, like getting everybody on the phone or getting everybody to sign, because maybe this guy works late or he lives in a different time zone. And anyways, we dealt with it. Apart from Jack and his wife, there was 3 other people involved, so it wasn't that bad. But yeah, I mean, I've seen it be like 7 different people. For some reason, the attorney told us that it's actually easier, this is just a side note, to have the spouse inherit a property rather than the children. So we structured the documentation so that Jack Sr.'s wife would be the one to inherit the estate, but just amended the contract to say that all the proceeds from the sale that followed probate will be going straight to Jack Jr. I'm not an attorney, I'm just letting you know what kind of worked for me. This is something you can discuss with whatever attorney you end up working with. If you do need an attorney, like a probate attorney in Florida or Georgia, just contact me. I know a couple. So yeah. Now we play the waiting game. We wait for the court to do whatever it is they gotta do. And this usually takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, but it could take much more or even less. Then attorney closes the estate after filing their distribution of assets. So We keep waiting, and then when the court approves everything, the attorney finalizes the probate. And we're free to close. I believe it took about 6 weeks for the whole probate process to be completed. That is after the payoffs are received, affidavits of death signed, and finally for the court to approve everything and the attorney to finalize the probate. So that's not including trying to get the payoff and all that. For probate, it's really more complicated. It's really more simple than it seems. It's not complicated at all. It's just about getting everybody on board, and then really the attorneys kind of take care of the paperwork and all that. You just got to get everybody to sign everything they got to sign. So don't overcomplicate it for yourself. Also find an attorney who's willing to wait till closing to get paid. So inspections lead to lower assignments typically. So when you really get into the property, for this property we really had to get in there because the pictures weren't good enough, this will happen. So we're already taking $4 to $5K from our planned assignment fee because of the lawyer fees, but that's all good because there's a lot of room here and that won't hurt too much. Since probate is closed, we can now go ahead and, get everything done with our buyers and that kind of thing. And for this, we need to get into the property and get some better photos of it. So we set that up, send someone out there to take some good photos of it. By the way, if you're not well connected and don't have people to send around, just look on Facebook groups and stuff like that, and for locals, and tell them, hey, I'll pay you X amount if you go take some photos. I wouldn't pay more than $100 if it's not a professional doing it. Big note for beginners and just broke people. If you're new to real estate, one good way to get connections and talk to people who are really doing deals is to be the person that can go and take pictures of the properties and do it all at a slight discount or even a massive one. Just go into the big Facebook groups and put yourself out there. Based on the photos, our buyers start coming down on price just because they think some more repairs might have to be made than expected. We have some of them walk the property and we agree on a little less than $40,000. As for like the total assignment fee, after all, whatever we gotta pay is paid, we'll end up with $40K net. That's pretty good. Last minute, title says they need a new payoff since it's been too long since the last one, because it might have been, because since probate began and that kind of thing, it's been like over a month and a half. And so they need a new payoff. And so we need to do all that again. This time it didn't take as long, but it still extended closing quite a bit. And our buyer, coincidentally, was going on a trip that new planned week of closing. And it was a whole thing, but finally his partner was able to go and sign off on everything and the closing date, and boom. We closed a net a little less than $40,000 after all is said and done. And everything took between 3 to 4 months. That consisted of waiting for payoffs, getting documents signed, waiting for probate to go through, getting photos, negotiating with our buyers, waiting for our buyers to close. But it was super worth it, obviously, because we got a fire assignment and learned a shit ton. So some key takeaways. Remember this stuff. As a beginner, people don't consider how important it is to have a transaction coordinator, or to have a buyer's list, to have reliable title companies that you're working with. If it wasn't for our TC being able to put together our contracts and put clauses in them that allow us to be flexible on certain things, if you can do this by yourself, great, that's a great skill. People will pay great money for it, but I don't have that skill. So if it wasn't for, we actually partnered with someone on Dispo for this one. So if it wasn't for them having a massive buyers list to avoid the headache of finding reliable buyers, and trust me, there are few and far between. Is that how you say it? Doesn't matter. These types of deals would just be impossible if it wasn't for all those things. Really, all you need to remember from this is that you have to negotiate really well and agree on a number that gives you a lot of room, especially when you're wholesaling. In pre-foreclosure situations, payoff statements take a while to get, and sometimes they're necessary for the probate process, and they're obviously necessary for the sale. If you find a lawyer who has worked with investors before, this is important. They'll be able to grant all the necessary documents, but be ready for a whole lot of phone calls with multiple people, reminding them or letting them know that they have to sign a new document after having bothered them the day before about the same shit. It's just a whole lot of facilitating things like that. I'm thirsty. Hope you guys learned a thing or two. I try keeping things as straightforward as possible. Any questions, comment them below or DM me on Instagram. It's linked in the description and my bio. Take care.